In the last episode, documenting the full build for guitar number 85, we finished up by cutting the notches into the kerfing to accept the brace ends of the back, and then ultimately attaching the back to the rim set. Now in this episode, we're picking things up, starting out working on the fretboard. Alright guys and girls, I'm now going to jump over to the fretboard. Not going to do anything crazy here, just going to be putting mother of pearl dots at the 5th, 7th, 9th, and 12th frets. I don't like to do the 15 and the 17 or the 3rd fret. Some people put a dot on the 3rd fret as well, just because it looks a little too crowded. I like it to be a little more sparse, so just the 5, 7, 9, and 12. And then it will also be doing mother of pearl side dots as well. Now in the case of the side dots, I fill it out a little bit more. The side dots are for the musician, whereas the show face here is for the audience, more or less. Some players still kind of reference the dots off the face, but they don't necessarily need to, because you have the side dots here. Anyway, let's get started marking this thing out. And X marks the spot. Using a small straight edge, I can mark an X in the relevant fret space. The center of that X gives me the location of my dot. Alright, so I did the 5 and the 9 first, because at the 7 and at the 12, I'm actually going to do 2 dots. And so what I have to do is first do the 5th, skip the 7th, do the 9th, so that I can then connect these 2 centers like this, and that will split the fret into 2 boxes, and then I can mark an X in each box, which gives me my double dot. Gives me the center of those 2 boxes for where I'm going to drill my dot. Alright, so now I can go to the 7 and the 12 and mark out the double dot. Alright, now this is the point where I double and triple check my placement here so I don't end up with 2 dots on, say, the 11th fret or the 13th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Bingo. Got it. Once I'm confident with my locations, I can punch them out with an awl, and then we're ready for the drill press. And now on to the side dots. I've marked out my side dot locations, and now I'm punching them out with an awl, being extra careful not to let the weaker resistance of the areas between the grain pull my mark slightly off my center. That's always a problem when you're marking on a non-homogeneous material like wood. And now you can see I'm drilling the holes, press fitting the mother of pearl into the hole, and then wicking in water thin super glue. Alright, so I drilled my holes for the face dots, but I didn't install them yet. And that's because later on, I'm going to be radiusing and leveling the fretboard in place, meaning after it's installed both to the neck and the neck is installed to the body. So basically when the fretboard is in its final resting place, that's when I'm going to do some heavy leveling. And I always like to wait to install these dots until that point, just because I never know exactly how much leveling I'm going to be doing, and I don't want to sand through any dots or anything like that. So it just behooves me to wait until then. But this is a good time to get those holes done. The side dots, however, are completely done. Inlays installed, sanded back, and they look cool. Alright, let's move on to something totally different now. Moving on to the neck, and more specifically the headstock shape, I'm first rough shaping the headstock on the spindle sander, just getting myself close to the line. Then I'm going to fix a template using double stick tape to my headstock and finalize it on the robo sander, which is essentially the abrasive equivalent of a flush trim router bit. So rather than using a flush trim router bit, I am using a sanding sleeve held in the drill press with a bearing that follows the template perfectly. So I've got the shape of the headstock finalized on the robo sander using my template here. Before I take this template off, I want to use these holes on the template to mark out where my tuner holes are going to be. Recently I got this cool set of transfer punches, and shout out to past student of mine, Scott Powers, who suggested I pick these up because prior to this I was literally just using a drill bit of the same size and tapping that in there, which leaves just a pretty poorly defined mark to locate your tuner holes later. This does a nicer job, and it's what it was really meant to do. Alright, so there we have it, our headstock shape with the tuner holes. Pretty cool, right? And it looks a little off, don't you think? So this is actually my new headstock design here, where really what I wanted to do was just create, I liked this very thin, minimal headstock shape, and I wanted to get all the tuners to be straight pull, to be in such a position that you get a straight run of each string over the nut, rather than on the typical, say, Martin style headstock where the strings get pulled off to the side. So these are all straight pull, and to get them on this super skinny headstock shape, you just have to stagger them like so. When this is all said and done, you will see what I mean, and you'll see how the strings kind of run straight up towards the tuners, like a Paul Reed Smith does. Our tuners, by the way, are these Steinberger tuners. I will leave this as a cliffhanger for now, because we will be dealing more with tuners much later on when this guitar is nearly finished. So more on that later. Let's get back to work. Now jumping finally to our beautiful Redwood soundboard. We are going to get started on the rosette. This rosette will be comprised of 63,000th of an inch wide mother of pearl strips sandwiched between 40,000th of an inch wide strips of black, white, black dyed fiber strip. Once I've routed my channel down to depth, I start creeping up on my final width of the channel by test fitting the elements of the rosette until they just fit. With every pass of the Dremel, I adjust the radius just a hair wider to sneak up on that final fit. By the way, that white flexible material that I'm sandwiching in between the purfling strips is not the mother of pearl. If you've ever handled mother of pearl, you know that obviously it does not behave in that elastic manner. But I'll explain more on what that material actually is in just a moment. Okay, the fit of the channel is perfect. I'm going to glue these elements in place with Titebond. Alright, so this is sat for a good long time, so I can take this off. It's sat for at least 45 minutes, but I would feel comfortable taking this off after just 30 minutes or maybe even a little bit less. So what's interesting about this here is this center strip here, the white portion, is actually not a part of the rosette at all. I'm going to pull that out now. That is a Teflon strip. The whole purpose of that piece of Teflon in there is for it to resist sticking with the glue so we can take it back out. It has then been like a placeholder for the mother of pearl that we're going to put in there afterwards, because we can't the mother of pearl goes in little tiny segments, so you can't just run the glue, wood glue, and then stick in all the pieces and these outside strips all at the same time. You can't do it quick enough, not to mention, and this is important too, the pearl does not stick with wood glue. So the name of the game here is to get your outside border pieces in first, and in order to wedge them up against the sides, you can use this Teflon as a placeholder. Now we're going to pull it out and we're going to get started filling in the space between with the little pearl segments. Before I do that though, I just want to level this. Before I pull this out, I'm going to take a little plane here and level both the dyed fiber strips and the Teflon all together, get it nice and low, and then pull out the Teflon strip. And the only reason for that is because if I pull out the Teflon strip first, then it's really easy to kind of, through the process of leveling the dyed fiber strips, you can kind of like bend them over a little bit, which makes it harder or even impossible to fit your pearl later. Alright, so check this out. So I start out with these little curved pieces of pearl, which you can get from Lutherie suppliers. They got these ones from LMI. StuMac has them as well. And obviously you can make these too, but you know that. And the idea is that what we want to do is cut these into small enough pieces that we can follow this curve. The curve of the rosette, or if you're doing purflings, which we'll be doing later, you would follow however gentle or not so gentle that curve becomes. You're going to adjust how small of a piece and how much you're going to angle the end based on how much curve you have. Which, when I say it like that, it sounds harder than it is. It's actually pretty easy and pretty intuitive to get this done right. So first of all, I'm just going to nip this. For the size of this curve here, breaking this in half is about right. And I'm using this cup here just so that the one piece doesn't skate off the table, but I angled the cup poorly and it did skate off the table. So there it is. Okay, so I got two pieces, and now I'm going to take this over here. And we're just gonna first clean up my rough edge on the board. It's good to have a nice long sanding board like this for this kind of work, because I can just lock my arm nice and steady and pull back, and that way, because I'm not arcing my arm across, I'm not going to get this rounded over edge here. I'm going to get a nice flat edge. Classic. Scam likely. Get about 100 of those a day. Alright, so now coming over here, we're going to take a look at the joint here, meaning the very last piece. I have like 4 pieces in here right now. The very last piece, the angle of the end of that piece, I want to see how that meets my existing piece. And there's a very large gap there, so it meets poorly right now. So what I want to do is angle this side so that it matches. And I'm going to do that on the same board that I was just using over here. Okay, now that, and I haven't pushed it in yet, that looks much better. So now when I push that in, that'll go in nice and seamless. I just keep a little piece of hardwood here. This is actually an ebony binding scrap. Sometimes you need to push it like this to get the butt up against the previous piece. Okay. Alright, now it's just rinse and repeat for all the individual shell pieces, carefully aligning those joints between the pieces as I make my way around the rosette. Just like with the side dots earlier in this video, I am once again using water-thin super glue so I can take advantage of that awesome capillary action, and I'm simply wicking it in between the joints, between the shell pieces. And I'm very careful to target the joints between the shell pieces and not to simply flood the area with super glue, because super glue and softwoods actually don't mix very well. The water-thin super glue can actually stain softwoods pretty deeply. Alright, and it's been quite the journey on this rosette. All I'm doing now is simply leveling the work that I've done. Alright, and this is ready to go. It might not look like it's completely ready to go, simply because I never sand these all the way down, because I know I'm going to be doing extra sanding after the binding is installed. So that will be the point when I really clean up this whole top, and these glue stains will go away. This little repair over here will go away as well. So I know it's hard, but you always got to just wait until much further down the process to actually see what some of these cool aesthetic features look like. Otherwise you end up just over sanding on the piece. Okay, let's move on. Okay, and that I think is enough action for one video. We will pick up where we've left off here in the next episode in this series, documenting guitar number 85. Here I'm simply removing the sound hole, which I always do after the rosette is installed. So we'll be picking up with our sound hole removed and rosette installed and getting started on the soundboard bracing. See you guys in the next one. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.